if your friends enjoy hearing an annoying 25-year-old yap about Disney, then they might enjoy this. Welcome to another episode of the Disney with Kels podcast. I'm your host, Kelsey Conkling, and this week I'm going to focus on all the different types of transportation at the Walt Disney World Resort. Now, if you've ever been to Walt Disney World, you know that it is a big place. It spans about 43 square miles or about 25,000 acres. There's 4 theme parks, 2 water parks, 4 golf courses, 19 Disney resort hotels, 2 mini golf courses, and then of course Disney Springs, which is the dining and entertainment district of Disney. It is a really big place. And so because of that, Disney has really tried to streamline their transportation and make it very accessible for people that visit Walt Disney World. So I'm just going to go into all the different types of transportation that are offered at Walt Disney World so that you can get a better idea of how to get around the parks in a safe and efficient way. So the first form of transportation at Walt Disney World are the Disney World buses. Now these are what you would think of when you think of city buses. So you can either sit there's some chairs in there, or you can stand, and at the end of the night or first thing in the morning, they are very packed. Now the Walt Disney World buses are wheelchair accessible. They either have 2 or 3 wheelchair designated spots for them to be anchored on the buses. They run from every Walt Disney World resort hotel and take you to all the different theme parks. Now, I will preface this by saying not every single Walt Disney World resort hotel has a bus that goes to every single theme park. Some of the resorts have other means of transportation to get you to different theme parks. However, in general, they do have buses to the theme parks. They all have at least one bus. So, for example, at the Riviera Resort, you can take the bus to Magic Kingdom and to Animal Kingdom. However, you have to take the Skyliner if you want to go to Epcot or Hollywood Studios. Now, at these Disney Resort hotels that do offer these different types of transportation on very busy days, very busy times, they might offer the bus as an alternate mode of transportation to get to these different places. Now, for the bus, again, they run all day, and generally a bus will come pick you up from either your Disney Resort hotel or at the theme parks about every 20 minutes. Now, before anyone gets up in the comment section, yes, sometimes that is delayed, and sometimes during shift change they get off on different timings and everything like that. So sometimes there's a bus that comes every 5 minutes, but then none for like 40 minutes. But in general, I think you can expect to have a bus rolling up every 20 minutes or so. And that being said, there are buses that run back to every Walt Disney World Resort hotel from every theme park, except for maybe the ones that have those other modes of transportation. And generally, well, this is just a fun fact, the less you pay for your hotel, the farther you have to walk at the end of the day to get to your bus station at the parks. So, for example, if you're staying at the Grand Floridian and you go visit Epcot, you can also take the monorail. But if you are choosing to take a bus, because I believe they do run a bus from there, your bus stop is probably going to be right up front. But if you are staying at one of the all-star resorts, the bus station is quite a ways away. They just do that as another little perk of staying deluxe, moderate, or value, that, you're getting your value for that. That's just a little fun fact. Some things to consider when taking the Walt Disney World buses: you must fold up your stroller before the bus can leave. And generally, the bus drivers will be standing out of the front, reminding you to fold up your stroller before you even get on the bus. This is a Department of Transportation law in Florida. All strollers have to be folded up before you get on a bus. Again, with the Wheelchair accessibility. There is a separate spot at every bus stop for wheelchairs. And if there are more than 2 or 3 wheelchairs waiting to get on, you might have to wait for another cycle to go by. But those do have to be anchored onto the bus for safety reasons. And some of the newer buses don't have as many seats available as some of the older buses, so that's just something to keep in mind as well. But there are handles to hold on to as you go on your journey. And I will say they do a pretty good job of keeping them air conditioned, but sometimes, especially at the very beginning of the day, very end of the night, the doors stay open for a long time to let people on or off, and that can get pretty warm in there. So just some considerations. So that's basically the buses. Check with whatever Disney Resort hotel you're staying at to find out what types of transportation they have. But I will go into those other types of transportation right here for you. So another form of transportation at Walt Disney World is the monorail. Now, the monorail has 3 different resort hotels that it goes to, and those are the Contemporary, the Polynesian, and the Grand Floridian. Those are what we call the monorail loop, and they are all in the Magic Kingdom Resort area. The monorail goes around to those. There's 3 separate monorail tracks. There is the Express monorail that goes from the Transportation and Ticket Center, which is located in between the Contemporary and the Polynesian, which picks guests up from the Transportation and Ticket Center, which is where the parking lot is for Magic Kingdom. And you can take that to go directly from the Transportation and Ticket Center to Magic Kingdom and vice versa. That's what it does all day. It goes from the TTC to Magic Kingdom, back to the TTC, back and forth all day. That is the Express monorail. You can also take the Resort monorail, which goes on a loop from the Transportation and Ticket Center, and then it goes to the Polynesian, then the Grand Floridian, then the Magic Kingdom, then the Contemporary, and back to the Transportation and Ticket Center, or the TTC. And there's also a third monorail track that goes from the Transportation and Ticket Center over to Epcot. Now, this is one of my favorite ways to travel to Epcot if I am over in the Magic Kingdom area. If you are staying on one of those monorail loop resorts, then you can take the resort monorail to the Transportation and Ticket Center and then transfer monorails over to Epcot. And that Epcot monorail, same thing. It's on a loop all day from Epcot back to the Transportation and Ticket Center. So if you don't want to keep going in a circle, you do need to get off and transfer to a different monorail track. But if you don't know what a monorail is, it is an elevated train, basically, and it's on a single rail, a monorail. So it's basically just sitting on this big concrete rail with wheels on either side on the concrete rail that propels you forward. It is a very fun way to be transported. I think I love the monorail. It is air conditioned for the most part, but it does, honestly, in my opinion, the monorail needs some updating. The smell, it might not ever go away, but it smells very musty, kind of old. But yeah, the monorail is a great way to travel. It is very relaxing. I think there are seats in the monorail as well as poles that you can hang on to if you are standing, especially beginning of the day, end of the day. They do get very crowded. So that's just something to consider. The Express monorail is the busiest at the beginning and the end of the day. So if you don't want to wait as long, you can get on the resort monorail, and it does take longer to get you there, but it is probably going to be less crowded first thing in the morning. So that is the monorail. And again, just considerations. You can take your strollers onto the monorail. They don't necessarily have to be folded up. It's not a rule or anything like that. And usually people will keep their kids in their strollers if it's not super busy. Now, if it is super crowded, just be considerate of others and fold up your stroller, make your kid stand by you, hold them, sit with them in the seat. For wheelchair accessibility, it is wheelchair and ECV accessible. They put a ramp for you and you roll right up into the car and just lock your wheels and you can stay in your chair the whole time, which is great. Same as the buses, you can stay in your chair the whole time. So that's the monorail. Love the monorail. Super fun. And then another way that you can get around the Walt Disney World Resort is by boats. And specifically right now, I'm going to talk about the friendship boats. Now, these friendship boats are smaller vessels that go to the Walt Disney World resorts to different destinations. So at Magic Kingdom, there are friendship boats that pick up from Fort Wilderness, Wilderness Lodge, the Grand Floridian, and the Polynesian. So those they all have little docks that can take you from those resort hotels over to the Magic Kingdom. And something really cool about those boats is once you get to the Magic Kingdom part of the, it's not an island, but it's surrounding the lake. When you get to the Magic Kingdom part, you actually get to go through security right when you get off the boat. Takes no time at all. It's very efficient, and that way you can go straight to the ticket booths to go into the parks. But these boats, they're a bunch of different kinds of boats, but they are smaller vessels. But they are really convenient, and you get to be on Bay Lake and the Seven Seas Lagoon. You get a really cool view of Magic Kingdom if you're on these boats. It can take a little bit longer compared to the other types of transportation, but I love traveling by boats. I can tell I love all of the different types of transportation. And then the friendship boats at some other resorts take you to Epcot and Hollywood Studios. And those resorts are the Boardwalk, Beach Club, and Yacht Club, which are right next to each other, so they share the same dock. And then the Swan and Dolphin resorts, which are, I like to call them Disney resorts adjacent because they're not really technically run by Disney. They're not really considered a Disney World resort, but they're on Disney property. I think, and I don't want to misspeak, they're either run by Marriott or Hilton. There's somebody like that. So anyway, but you can get on friendship boats at those resorts. Again, Boardwalk, Yacht and Beach Club, and Swan and Dolphin to take you to Epcot and Hollywood Studios. These vessels are a little bit bigger just because they pick up more people. But yeah, those are really fun as well. And then at some resorts, there is a boat that takes you to Disney Springs. Now, this is amazing. If you love Disney Springs, love shopping and dining and entertainment district areas, you might want to pick one of these resorts so that you can ride a boat to Disney Springs because they're very close. And those are Old Key West Resort, Saratoga Springs Resort, and then Port Orleans, both Riverside and French Quarter. Things to consider about the boats: they are wheelchair accessible, but if you get even a little bit seasick, maybe don't go on it on the boats, because the boats are kind of like an extra form of transportation, because usually at these resorts there are also buses that take you to these places, or there are walkways. I know specifically at the Boardwalk, and I think it's the Boardwalk. Yes, you can walk from the Boardwalk to Epcot because it is right there, just right down the way. But if walking is more difficult for you, you can take the boat. It's awesome. And for those that go to Epcot, Boardwalk, Yacht and Beach Club, and Swan and Dolphin, it actually drops you off at International Gateway at Epcot, which is located in World Showcase in the back of the park, right next to France. So you're right next to Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, which is super fun. So yeah, those are the friendship boats. There is also another type of boat at Walt Disney World, and that is the ferry boat. Now, the ferry boat goes in between the Transportation and Ticket Center and Magic Kingdom entrance all day long. They are giant vessels. If you don't know what a ferry boat is, you need to watch more Grey's Anatomy or go to Disney World more. But a ferry boat is just a very large boat that can hold many, many, many people. So they use this as one of the primary forms of transportation from Magic Kingdom to the Transportation and Ticket Center, which again is the parking lot for Magic Kingdom. And then what else? There is another boat. I know there's so many boats at Disney World. There's also a boat within Epcot. The World Showcase Lagoon has a boat that can take you from I'm trying to think. It is like the front part of the World Showcase over to Morocco. So if you don't want to walk all the way around World Showcase to get to the other side, you can take a boat and it takes you across that lagoon. So that's super convenient as well. And I do believe that is wheelchair accessible too. And of course, the ferry boat is wheelchair accessible. Kids can stay in their strollers. No big deal there. There are also another form of transportation are the parking lot trams. There are currently all the trams are in operation at all 4 of the Walt Disney World theme parks. This was not the case for a very long time. They only recently opened the trams back up at all of the resorts. During COVID, they shut down the trams because they cut a lot of jobs, and so there wasn't as many drivers available, which was really unfortunate. But they are all back now, which was very much a blessing. I went on my road trip, and I think I talked about that in the first episode. So when I was on my road trip, I had my car, and I thought that it was going to be a really convenient way to get to the parks. I'm like, yeah, I can just drive there and it'll be so much faster than taking a bus or any other mode of transportation. In my opinion, that is very incorrect. Well, at the time. So I ended up taking my car to Hollywood Studios. I was staying at Fort Wilderness at the campgrounds. So I took my car to Hollywood Studios, but I didn't realize that at the time, this was summer of 2023 in June, they did not have parking lot trams at Hollywood Studios yet. And so I had to walk in the blazing hot June Florida sun from my car all the way into the parks. This was not ideal. This was not ideal at all, especially coming back because I was already tired, dehydrated, and then having to walk back in the direct sunlight because there's absolutely no shade at all. That just wasn't good for me. So anyway, they do have parking lot trams now at all 4 of the theme parks. So that's great. So if you do want to drive, which is another form of transportation, but that's on you, you can rent a car or take a road trip and bring your own car. I've also seen people rent U-Hauls. If you are like, if it's just you or maybe just 2 people, you can just rent a U-Haul truck and it's pretty cheap and you only have to be 18 because for a lot of the rental cars, you have to be 25. And I just turned 25 the end of last year. So, I'm like, yay, I can rent a car for not as expensive, but it's still very expensive. So just something to keep in mind. Anyway, so those are the parking lot trams. Again, at Magic Kingdom, it does not take you directly to the entrance of Magic Kingdom. You do go to the Transportation and Ticket Center, and then you have to get either on the monorail or the ferry boat to get over to the entrance. And during very busy times, they will sometimes, and this is very case by case, day by day basis. If they have enough people, if it's busy enough, they will run buses from the Transportation and Ticket Center over to the entrance of Magic Kingdom. But again, it's a day by day thing, case by case thing. So don't count on that. But you would need to take the monorail or the ferry boat. Excuse me, my nose itches. Over to the entrance. And then we have another form of transportation, y'all. There are so many different types of transportation at Walt Disney World. We have the Skyliner. Yay! So this is the newest form of transportation at Disney World. And I remember when they announced this, it was years and years ago. I was like, that doesn't sound convenient at all. How are they going to pull this off? Because they were talking about a Skyliner going between Epcot and Hollywood Studios and several resorts. And I'm like, what? This is going to take up so much space. It's going to be so inconvenient. People aren't going to like this. I was very wrong. I love the Skyliner. So again, if you don't know what a Skyliner is, basically they are these cable cars attached to a cable. But they are all enclosed. They do have wheelchair accessible Skyliner cars, cabs, whatever they're called. And it's a great form of transportation. If you are scared of heights, probably choose a different form of transportation. However, I will say if you are staying at one of the resort hotels that does have Skyliner access, they don't always run buses to those theme parks that the Skyliner takes you to. So you need to just think about that. Make your own decision what's best for you. But it does go pretty high up in the air at certain points. I have never felt unsafe. However, there was an incident, maybe a few incidences when the Skyliner first opened that people were stuck in the air for a while because of safety issues on the loading station and things like that. Also for the Skyliner, it does stop periodically if someone needs more time to load, or there's some sort of safety something. You might be stuck for a few minutes. It's usually just a few minutes, or it slows down for just a little bit. But other than that, I've always felt very, very safe on the Skyliner. But that being said, where can you take the Skyliner? The Skyliner goes to 4 different resorts, and those are the Art of Animation Resort and Pop Century, which do share a station over the water. So you go across a bridge and meet in the middle between Art of Animation and Pop Century. Those are both value resorts. So this is a really good perk of staying at one of these value resorts, is that you get Skyliner access because it is very convenient and very fast when compared to buses or the boats or any of the other forms of transportation. So Art of Animation and Pop Century, and then Caribbean Beach Resort, which I believe is a moderate resort. Fact check me on that, please. And then the Riviera Resort, which is a deluxe DVC resort. So from Art of Animation and Pop Century, you take the Skyliner to Caribbean Beach Resort, which is like the hub. So from this hub, you can get to wherever you need to go. When you get to the hub, you can choose to get on the Epcot line or the Hollywood Studios line. So Hollywood Studios line is a straight shot there, no worries. But then the Epcot line from Caribbean Beach Resort, you do make a stop at the Riviera. So I have stayed at the Riviera, out of the 4 of these, the most. I have stayed at the Riviera the most. And sometimes it can be a little, not annoying, I guess, but just like, okay, I need to practice patience because when people get on at Caribbean Beach Resort to go to Epcot, they just stay on the same car. It's a continuous line from Caribbean Beach Hub through Riviera over to Epcot. So if you're staying at Epcot or if you're staying at Riviera and want to go to Epcot, then you have to wait for an empty car or a car that can accommodate you before going on to Epcot. And I think they do try to like kind of space it out so that there's always an empty car, like every few cars going. But again, they're also just trying to get people to where they need to go. So you might have to wait a little bit if you're at the Riviera. But going from the Riviera to Hollywood Studios, like going to the hub and then going to Hollywood Studios, never really a wait at all, never an issue. So that being said, that takes you then on to Epcot. And then that station is actually also at International Gateway, the same with the Friendship boats. And you go in basically the backside of the park at World Showcase. And this has helped, I think, with crowds. However, International Gateway is a much smaller area compared to the front of the park. So it can get pretty bottlenecked in the morning and in the evening. The line for the Skyliner at the very end of the day can be very long, but I say it does move pretty quickly. However, because of just the volume of people using it at the time of day, it does get... there's just a higher chance of things going wrong. So just something to consider. But again, a lot of times they really do encourage you to use the Skyliner if it's available, because they might not be running buses and they don't want you to have to take a different form of transportation like an Uber or a Lyft or a minivan. So going on with that, another form of transportation are the minivans. Now the minivans are driven by Disney cast members. However, it is operated through Lyft. So if you want to use minivan, what it is basically a private car. It operates like an Uber or a Lyft, although it is operated by a Disney cast member. So you get that Disney level of service, and you get to go to the bus station. You get to go to the front of the park, typically. Yes, always, I think. Yes. So when you book a minivan, they pull you up right up to the park or a resort. So me and my grandma, we had a very early reservation for breakfast at Kona Cafe when we went. And there wasn't really a super easy way to get to the Polynesian. So we decided to book a minivan, and I felt so fancy. And he rolled us right up to the front of the resort and was super friendly and played Disney music that was themed to the Polynesian, so that we kind of got in the zone and in the mood for it. I really enjoyed that. But yeah, so that is a really great option if you are willing to pay a little bit more, because it does cost a little bit more than an Uber or a Lyft. However, just the fact that they pull you right up to the front of the park is excellent. And also, the Uber and Lyft pickup stations, just like the normal Uber and Lyft ones, are located usually beyond the buses. At Magic Kingdom, that's actually located at the Transportation and Ticket Center. So you have to get all the way to there and then they pick you up. But with the minivan service at Magic Kingdom, it's where the buses are. And I think it's one of the very first stations you get to, which is super cool. And yeah, so that's a really big perk. And again, it's a Disney cast member. So it's very trusted. They have car seats available. I think you do have to pay maybe a little bit more for that. Don't quote me on that, but they have different sizes of cars for the minivans. I think now, like, they have actual like vans for big parties and then the SUVs for smaller parties. But yeah, that's a great option. But again, you book it through Lyft, and when you're in Disney World and you get on your Lyft app, it'll give you the option to book a minivan, which it's minivan, Minnie Mouse van, if that was unclear. And they're wrapped with polka dots like Minnie Mouse. So that's super fun. I don't know what I'm doing with my hands. Sorry if you're watching on YouTube. I'll try to not be like that. And then, of course, another form of transportation is Uber and Lyft. So those classic rideshare things. I will say a good tip from me, and I know people are going to be like, why are you telling everybody? It's not going to be a tip anymore. Hardly anyone listens to this, so it's not a big deal. But if you are going from a Walt Disney World theme park to wherever, if you're going back to even your own Disney Resort hotel, or if you're staying off property or like an Airbnb or something, it is going to be more expensive for you to book an Uber or Lyft from the actual theme park itself. What I would recommend, and what I have done before, is travel to the nearest Walt Disney World resort that you can, or that's like maybe even closest off property, if you're staying off property, or just go to whatever is nearest to that theme park and then request your Uber or Lyft, because you don't have a surcharge. Because you're at the theme parks and because they know that a bunch of people are requesting Ubers and Lyfts at that moment, there is a surcharge. And to avoid that, for the most part, it depends on the time of day too. It is a lot cheaper to book it from a Disney Resort hotel. So what I did when I stayed off property on one of my solo trips is when I was at Magic Kingdom, there's a walkway to the Contemporary Resort. So I walked over the Contemporary, actually it was Bay Lake Tower, and booked my Uber, and it was a lot cheaper than when I had booked it from the Transportation and Ticket Center the day before. So that's just another tip. And again, you can also bring your own car if that is an option for you. Rent a U-Haul, do whatever you fancy. But yeah, those are the forms of transportation at Walt Disney World. I know I talked really fast and I talked a lot, but I try to oh my gosh, sorry, my words. I try to utilize every form of Disney transportation on the trips. I think it's like a fun thing you can do, not just with yourself, but like with your kids. Like, yeah, we rode a monorail today, and we rode on a boat and a bus, and we walked places. I mean, that's inevitable. You're going to walk everywhere. But yeah, so those are all the ways that you can get around the Walt Disney Resort very easily. Not very easily. Sometimes they can be a bit of a headache. But overall, I think Disney has done a really great job of improving their transportation. I think there's still work to be done, but I think they have done a really good job at listening to the guests and making these improvements. Some changes I'm not quite a big fan of, but it's the little things and then the big things of even more transportation that have really made a difference in the guest experience. So that's just my opinion. You can form your own opinions about the transportation, but those are mine. And I am going to put the Disney joke of the week here at the end. So here is
Joke of the week.
Great. So I had been putting the Disney joke of the week in the middle of the segment, but I just forgot to bring it up until now. So here we go. Here is the Disney joke of the week. Why can't the 7 dwarves go to bars? Why can't the 7 dwarves go to bars? It's because they're all minors. But okay, that was really bad. But that was
Joke of the week.
Okay, I put it in there twice. If I didn't remember to put the little graphic in there, I'm sorry. But that was the Disney joke of the week. Thank you so much for listening to another hastily thrown together Disney with Kels podcast. I appreciate you listening. If you are listening on one of the podcast apps, if you could give me a follow and maybe a like, maybe comment something. I don't know if you want to do that. If you are watching here on YouTube, if you could hit that subscribe button, that would be great. It costs you nothing except the energy it takes to move your finger over to the subscribe button. You can also like the video, leave a comment, do whatever you want. Just in case, share with your friends. I mean, I think if your friends enjoy hearing an annoying 25-year-old yap about Disney, then they might enjoy this. So anyway, thank you so much for listening to the Disney with Kels podcast. I'm your host, Kelsey Conkling. And as always, I hope you have a great, big, beautiful tomorrow. See you later.